I'm sorry for the audio today. There just happen to currently be several hundred kilometers of snowy abyss between me and my microphone, so this is what we'll have to deal with. I am literally currently inside a tiny closet. Toy Story 4 won the Oscar for the Best Animated Feature released in 2019. My opinion on the fact? Toy Story 4 is, visually speaking, extremely impressive. But to me personally, it felt like a spin-off rather than a continuation of the Toy Story trilogy. I have only watched this movie once when it released in the theaters, and honestly, I don't think I'm going to watch it again. In fact, I like to actively ignore its existence. But it won the Oscar because it's a Pixar movie. Then again, maybe I'm being a little harsh. I mean, out of the nominees for the Oscars that year, while many of these movies are good, there isn't any Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse here. There's nothing that's mind-blowingly good. Wait, what's this random French movie here? I've never heard of this one, the average moviegoer might be thinking. I wouldn't be surprised if most of the Oscar judges didn't even bother to watch this one. But I did, obviously, and I think that I Lost My Buddy should have won the Oscar over Toy Story 4. I saw I Lost My Buddy's trailer sometime in the late 2019 and I was intrigued. Because the main character of this movie is a decapitated hand walking around by itself. I mean, how could I not watch this movie? But nothing prepared me for how amazed I ended up being. There are a lot of things in this movie that I could talk about, such as how it handles topics like stalking, or its imagery, or its visual motifs, but for this video I chose to talk about how it creates tension. Because boy, does it do that! Aside from just being inherently cool, the very existence of this sentient hand has a narrative purpose. I said before that the hand is the main character of this movie, but there are actually two main characters, the hand and this young man named No-Phil. And it becomes very clear early on in the movie that the decapitated hand in fact belongs to No-Phil. No-Phil's hand has the same freckle as the decapitated hand, and we see several flashback scenes in which many of the shots specifically focus on No-Phil's hand. This tells the viewer two things. One, that No-Phil's story takes place earlier than the scenes we see with the decapitated hand because, well, No-Phil still has both of his hands here. And two, eventually, No-Phil is going to lose his hand. This is an excellent example of a horizon of expectation, which is a narrative device that's basically all about making the consumer of the narrative expect something. At its barest, a horizon of expectation could be this. Jack said that he's going to drink a smoothie today. If we see this sentence in a story, we expect that Jack is going to soon be drinking a smoothie. But a horizon of expectation can also be used in cooler ways to change the story. As a classic example, in the novel Crime and Punishment, due to the title of the story, we expect that there's going to be a crime and then a punishment for it. However, in the novel, the crime in question takes place very early on in the book, after which the main character just dwells in guilt and paranoia of being caught for like 500 pages, and only in the epilogue do we finally get to see him put behind bars. And he doesn't even seem to suffer much from that. In fact, he seems quite relieved. Oh, so the punishment in the title wasn't referring to corporal punishment. His mental turmoil is his punishment. This is a case of the horizon of expectation influencing the interpretation of a work. But in I Lost My Buddy, it instead influences the viewer's experience while watching the movie. Once you realize that No-Phil must at some point lose his hand, every detail and event in this storyline will be processed through that lens. He dreamed of being a pianist? He can never be a pianist if he loses his hand. He dreamed of being an astronaut? If he loses his hand, how will he ever accomplish that? He delivers pizzas as his job? How is he going to be driving a bike if he loses his hand? Sure, maybe he could get some advanced prosthetic hand, but he doesn't have money. It seems that he can't even hold a job. And his self-esteem is horrible even now that he still has both of his hands. Once he loses the other one, is he going to even be able to survive that? There's this anxiety and tension surrounding every single thing that happens to No-Phil, and it only gets worse from there. No-Phil finds a new job as a woodworker's apprentice and moves out of what I assume to be his surrogate family's apartment to live at the woodworker's place instead. This is an improvement to his situation, but does nothing to help the tension. Not only does a woodworking accident seem to be a really good candidate for losing your hand in, but Nofel is now almost wholly dependent on this job. The place he lives, his only source of income, the people he has grown to care about, and his only real hobby are all dependent on his ability to resume working with his hands. The stakes are higher now. The tension is worse. Every single time Nofel does anything that might jeopardize his safety, the viewer is hyper aware of this. And this movie has inserted several of these moments that have no other meaning in the story than to make the viewer worry. And the tension keeps heightening itself until we are met with this scene. Nofel's parents died in a car accident, so this creepy goat stepping onto the road should be an immediate warning. Something bad is about to happen. And almost immediately after we get this scene, Nofel begins chasing a fly while cutting up wood, while hungover. I would not be lying if I said that this scene is probably the most anxiety-inducing scene I have ever seen in an animated movie. The knowledge that he's going to lose his hand, the pressure of knowing how bad that would be for him in his current position, the previous scene with the goat, they all come together to create this absolute horror that is this scene. And it goes on for a full minute. And while most of the tension leaves with this scene, there's still some left after it, in which we await anxiously to see how Nofel copes with the loss of his hand and what the consequences are. And I'm not going to tell you what happens. I may have spoiled a lot of my favorite details about this movie just now, but if you haven't seen it and would still like to, I assure you that there are a lot of things in this movie that I just didn't cover now. So I think you'll have a good time watching it anyways. I believe that it's on Netflix, so it should be relatively easy to access. I highly recommend watching it, and in my heart, it won the Oscar. Thank you so much to my Patreon supporters. Load, Put Me on Fire, Flarina Fairy, PixieArt5, David Johnson, Gasinamu, Borkenstar, Brianna Perry, and Siskinfall. Your support means the world to me. If you would like to support me on Patreon, I'll leave a link to that in the description. And if you have seen the movie, I would like to know about your experience with it, as I barely see anyone ever talking about it. That's what the comment section is for. Thank you for watching. And the tension keeps heightening itself until we are wet.